I gotta tell you, it's not there's not a lot of good news today related to Israel and Palestine. Unfortunately, I wish we had better news. But we'll get to it real quick. The news has been absolutely exhausting. Yeah, and I feel like an asshole saying that, right? Cuz like it's not that hard for me to like cover it, you know? I mean, compared to the people going through it. Let's just watch George Santos losing his shit over and over on loop and play video games. I could get behind that. But I figure what we'll do, okay? I figure we will go over Israel Palestine stuff, get the heavy stuff out of the way, and then we'll pivot into covering analog horror. As you all know, we've been doing a dive into different analog horror series on YouTube, and I found several more that I hadn't heard of before that might be of interest to folks. And I'll let you guys vote on which one. All right, we'll get into it. So I saw the announcement last night, but haven't seen any clear coverage so far. Is it because there's a news blackout? Can you the announcement of what last night, Killjoy? Like, basically every hour more stuff is coming out. Um, and it is a doozy today. Nice mug, thank you, Soshi Inertia. I'm quite fond of it. You too can own your very own Riverboat Jack merch. Okay. The grand invasion and evacuation, but I haven't seen any real news despite people besides people covering the UN response. Yeah, we'll get into that. Pretty much first thing here. So, folks, yesterday I was on Leftist Mafia, and news broke that the Israeli military was sending out an alert to all residents of northern Gaza to evacuate to southern Gaza because they will be doing massive amounts of bombing and a ground campaign to invade the Gaza Strip, ostensibly to recover hostages and finish Hamas. Now, last night I heard from a different streamer that Israel has been using white phosphorus on civilians. Yes, additionally, do not be suckered into lies about the Israeli military is only carrying out strikes against targets it knows hold Hamas militants. No, they are just indiscriminately bombing, and that is shown by the fact that they are using white phosphorus. an illegal weapon of war. Like it is a war crime to use, and it's also one of the reasons it is considered a war crime to use is because it is indiscriminate. It is not something you can really aim with any degree of accuracy, and it is associated with dramatic increases in civilian mortality rates, meaning that it kills a lot of innocent people. And they're dropping it on the Palestinians, and accompanying it with like talking about burning the entire country to the ground. Hey, Tegma. I've been getting all my news from those channels Elon recommended. Apparently, it's breaking news that Jewish people did something. Yeah. Additionally, after announcing that, again, 1.1 million people, half the population of Gaza, had to compress itself into the lower half of Gaza, they began bombing anyone who actually left northern Gaza. So one of the stories here, this is from MSNBC.
NBC News can now report 3 convoys of what appear to be evacuees were just hit by Israeli strikes in Gaza. That's according to the Palestinian Health Ministry and also some of our own interviews. 70 people are dead. Only an hour. IDF said an extensive attack against military targets within Gaza was underway. This morning, Israel dropped thousands of leaflets in the north of the Strip, warning civilians to go south.
By the way, if you're wondering, hey, why did they have to drop leaflets to tell civilians that? It's because they've cut off electricity, and most of people's devices that are powered by electricity have run out by now. And on top of that, if there does happen to be anybody in the Gaza Strip who has access to electronics and like solar panels or something like that haven't been bombed, they're cutting the internet. I don't know if they've cut the internet already. In some places it looks like they might have, but the cutoff for all of Gaza being taken off of the internet is tomorrow. So essentially what it seems like is the Israeli military cut water, food, electricity, waited for people's batteries to die, and are now cutting off the internet to prevent the broadcasting of war crimes. Over 500,000 soldiers have massed on the border of Gaza, and the rhetoric is not changing here. Here's again one of the 5 members of Israel's war cabinet, newly formed, just openly saying they are going to kill everybody.
עזה לא תחזור להיות מה שהייתה, וחמאס לא יהיה. חסל את הכל. ייקח זמן. לא ייקח יום, לא ייקח שבוע. ייקח שבועות ואולי חודשים. אנחנו נגיע לכל המקומות. לא יהיה מצב שאת האחים שלנו, את הילדים שלנו, את ההורים שלנו ירצחו אותנו. כאילו אנחנו נמצאים במצב של מדינה, ואנחנו לא נגיע. אז אנחנו מבינים שחמאס רצה לשנות את המצב. זה ישתנה, עוד 180 מעלות בחזרה, הם יצטערו על הרגע הזה. יצטערו.
Yeah, no, he's just openly declaring that they are going to kill everybody. And additionally, there is more and more violence towards Palestinians on the West Bank, or in the West Bank, I should say, the occupied West Bank. 14 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces. And those are just people protesting the fact that Gaza is being bombed to shit. They're getting murdered by Israel's police force for protesting. Protests were held in cities across the Israeli-occupied territory on Friday, including Ramallah, Tulkarem, Nablus, and Hebron, hours after Israel ordered residents in northern Gaza to evacuate their homes ahead of an expected ground invasion. The AFP news agency reported that at least 3 people were killed in the town of Tulkarem, and a 14-year-old boy was killed in Beit Furik near Nablus. The news outlet DPA reported that Israeli settlers alongside soldiers took part in some confrontations with Palestinian protesters. Now, what that translates to, by the way, is whenever you hear settlers took part in violence alongside soldiers, is essentially the Israeli settlers, who are, definitionally, if you are an Israeli settler, you are illegally claiming land within Palestinian territory. What has happened since the Hamas attacks, Israeli settlers have armed up more than they ever have before, and they are just engaging in killing Palestinians on site, essentially. There's a video, I believe I have it here, that we're going to cover. It's horrible. It's horrible, horrible stuff. But there's a video circulating around of an Israeli settler, being confronted by a Palestinian, and he just pulls out a gun and shoots the Palestinian in the stomach. And no one around him can retaliate because there are armed IDF soldiers around him. Like, he's just allowed to kill somebody in broad daylight. That is what is happening right now. Additionally, there is pretty decent evidence from reporters on the ground, eyewitness reports, that Israel, with its airstrikes and artillery strikes, is targeting not just civilians, but also medical personnel and journalists. And also medical care facilities. This was earlier today. Israel gave Al Awada Hospital just 2 hours to evacuate. Our staff are still treating patients. We unequivocally condemn this action, the continued indiscriminate bloodshed and attacks on healthcare in Gaza. We are trying to protect our staff and patients. They are just bombing hospitals. Yeah, I found the video here. You can see exactly what happens here. There's no getting around this. This is the Israeli settler. This is the Palestinian man. Oh, sorry. This guy's the Israeli settler. Content warning, of course. Settler just pops out from behind a rock, walks up, hits him with the gun, knocks him down, and shoots him in the stomach. This is backed, as you can see here, by the IDF. This is an IDF soldier coming on over, not to prevent any bloodshed, by the way, but to protect this man who just shot somebody. Look at how unbothered he is. literally a guy came and stole their land and houses and is now picking up arms to just shoot them indiscriminately. Apparently, he later shot at the ambulance trying to prevent them transporting the Palestinian who he just shot to the hospital. Yeah, sounds about right. These atrocities are being committed en masse. Every action they have taken since the Hamas attack has been unquestioningly a war crime. The UN and the international community has just shown they only care about war crimes when other people do them. Well, yeah. There is an incredible amount of cowardice around this issue. Because, frankly, no one wants to get on the wrong side of the United States. And that means you gotta support Israel, you know? If you want to stay in the U.S.'s good graces, you gotta support Israel. At this point, there is only one thing that would cause Israel to stand down, and that is the United States exerting an immense amount of diplomatic pressure. And it is looking very unlikely that that is going to happen. Now, there have been a number of stories floating around today, such as a leaked internal memo indicating that the American State Department has basically said to all of its ambassadors, do not use the terms de-escalation or call for the end of the bloodshed, or do anything remotely in support of Palestinians. And a lot of this has people doom-pilling, and myself included, if I'm going to be honest with you. That being said, the word on the street, the political scuttlebutt from behind the scenes, is essentially that the United States has been working very intensely with Egypt to try and open a humanitarian corridor and secure that, along with the cooperation of the Israelis, to ensure that they don't bomb that humanitarian corridor to allow Gazans to escape into Egypt. However, Egypt seems to have closed down those diplomatic entreaties entirely, which is now why we're seeing a slight shift in rhetoric from Biden, and I think we're going to see maybe this increase over the next few days. But here's Biden earlier today.
The humanitarian crisis in Gaza. At my direction, our teams are working in the region, including communicating directly with the governments of Israel, Egypt, Jordan, and other Arab nations, and the United Nations to surge support and humanitarian consequences for Hamas attack to help Israel. You know, we can't lose sight of the fact that the overwhelming majority of Palestinians had nothing to do with Hamas and Hamas's appalling attacks, and they're suffering as a result as well. This morning, I spoke with the family members of all those Americans who are still in the humanitarian crisis.
So, essentially, if you look at what Biden has been communicating to the Israelis, and in slight shifts of rhetoric like this, first of all, in a publicly facing way, he basically called out Israel and said, hey, don't do war crimes. Now, you might be saying, Jack, that's the lowest possible bar, and of course it is, right? However, the fact that Biden said that at all indicates that there is an internal awareness of exactly how bad this is going to get. And the shift in rhetoric here is likely due to the fact that there are no escape routes. And the internal realization in Washington right now is essentially that this ground invasion is going to happen, and war crimes on a scale we can't even really comprehend are about to happen. So the diplomatic pressure, I think, is in the process of increasing. However, this is far too late to actually. There is a slim chance, a very slim chance, that the pressure is going to become great enough in a short enough amount of time to possibly prevent this ground invasion. But I very, very much doubt it. Okay? I very much doubt it. At this point, Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu are in too deep. They've already mobilized 500,000 soldiers. And frankly, things are on a knife's edge in a lot of different directions at the moment. One of the major news stories of the day is that, well, Hezbollah and Israel have been exchanging fire. Israel shelled different military outposts in Lebanon. It's unclear to me from the reporting whether or not those military outposts belong to Hezbollah or the Lebanese government. And now the conflict seems to be expanding beyond just the Gaza Strip. I don't know how serious this is going to be. Like maybe it's just like a tit for tat like situation going on. But it's not great. You know, certainly not great. Yeah. Israeli shelling strikes Lebanese army post after infiltration warning. Israeli shelling struck a Lebanese army observation post at the border on Friday, 3 sources in Lebanon told Reuters. After the Israeli military warned of a suspected armed infiltration that it said it was responding to with artillery fire. So, they suspected an armed intrusion, so they just started blasting. Israel later ruled out that any incursion had occurred, and residents of a village near the border, which had been instructed to hold up at home and lock doors and windows, were told they could go again outdoors. Later, Lebanon's Iran-backed, heavily armed Hezbollah group said it had carried out attacks on a number of border areas as a response to attacks Israel carried out earlier the day on southern Lebanese towns. The military statement said there had been an explosion at the adjacent border fence, which was lightly damaged. So, yeah, it's there have been a number of these clashes over the last few days, and there is a decent chance that if these tit-for-tat exchanges continue to happen, Hezbollah will attempt to retaliate. There's a thought that because of the terrain, Israeli troops will have a difficult time fighting Hamas. Not only the terrain, but the extensive tunnels Hamas has dug over the last 2 years they've spent plotting and planning. Well, yeah, I mean, that's why they've amassed 500,000 troops to do it, you know? They've effectively, like, brought up to bear, you know, the population of Gaza is 2.2 million. They have essentially like 1 soldier for every 4 Gazans, and remember, half of all of Gaza's population are children. So, like, I mean, they are going to counter the difficulty of the terrain with just overwhelming force. Now, also worth noting that the shelling in southern Lebanon killed a journalist and wounded several others. In fact, it appeared that the shelling was actually targeting the journalists, who were all very clearly marked as journalists. You know, journalists wear distinctive, like, helmet gear and body armor. They're carrying cameras, etc. And yeah, the shelling injured several reporters and killed 1. At least 1 journalist has been killed and 6 wounded, including 2 Al Jazeera reporters, in shelling by Israeli forces in southern Lebanon, according to witnesses at the scene. The Reuters news agency confirmed on Friday that Issam Abdallah, a videographer, was killed in the attack. Notice, by the way, that we just read the Reuters article, and it says nothing in it about their own reporter being killed in this shelling. They are so spineless that they don't want to say who killed him. Hey, Mama M Media. Al Jazeera said camera person Eli Brakiha and reporter Carmen Jukadar were also wounded. The tank shell hit them directly. It was horrible. The situation over there was, I can't explain, I can't describe it. Al Jazeera correspondent Ali Hashem reported from Alma al-Shab, Lebanon, adding that the team of reporters had been clearly marked as press. Agency France Press news agency said two of its reporters were also among those injured. AFP reported, citing a Lebanese security source, that the shelling followed from an attempted infiltration of the Israeli border from southern Lebanon by a Palestinian faction. However, remember, this didn't happen. They were literally killed for no reason. They were literally killed for no reason. There wasn't even an attempted infiltration. They just got skittish and bombed people who were marked as press. Yeah, here's Reuters' statement. We're deeply saddened to learn that our videographer, Issam Abdallah, has been killed. Issam was part of a Reuters crew in southern Lebanon who's providing a live signal. We are urgently seeking more information, working with authorities in the region, and supporting Issam's family and colleagues. Reuters journalists Thayer al-Sudani and Maher Nanazeh were also sustained injuries and are seeking medical care. Our thoughts are with the families at this terrible time. They can't even say, and they know full well who did it. Israel has tons of troops, but does Israel possess the amount of money it's going to take to keep those numbers potentially for years? Yes. Israel is a very wealthy country. And also the United States sends billions of dollars to them specifically for military purposes. Was this covered that Biden had to retract misinfo he stated during his address? Oh, yeah. Again, I don't really care so much about this story, because at the heart of it, like, babies and children were killed by Hamas. Like, that is just a fact. Whether or not they were beheaded, I don't really care. One is more heinous, I suppose, but either way, they're dead. And I understand Biden. Like, there was so much misinfo flying around related to that from multiple journalists who claimed to have been on the ground. But at the end of the day, what we're looking at right now is Israel killing a lot of babies. It's horrible. Even in this horrible, though, even in this horrible mess, we have tales of heroism. One of these heroic organizations is Palestine Red Crescent Society. which is basically like a Red Cross-like group that operates within Palestinian territory. And they put out a statement today. Again, everyone in Palestine right now, journalists, doctors, etc., are dealing with the fact that electricity is going to be gone soon. So in some cases, these are the final messages that are going to get out of Gaza. The Palestinian Red Crescent Society, despite the occupation's threats to shell, the decision has been made. We did and will not leave. Our medics will carry on their humanitarian duties. We won't leave people to face death alone. And just to really hammer home, like, what this means, Israel has been targeting healthcare workers. They've been targeting ambulances. We saw in some of our coverage yesterday multiple blown out ambulances. Any cars that are carrying people get targeted by shelling and air bombs, air raids. Yeah, we talked a little bit earlier about how a hospital was given 2 hours to evacuate before it got bombed. They're staying even though they know in this field of death that they're going to be singled out. Remember them. Do you think it's important to highlight what Americans can do? Because during the primaries in 2024, AIPAC and pro-Israel investors are going to be throwing money at ads to unseat and attack anyone who even abstained from the vote for Israel funding. Yeah, well, and that's one of the things, and this is why I have brought it back around to what we can do here in America domestically, right? Because it is very easy to feel hopeless, and it is very easy to give into despair. But ultimately, when we are looking at what we in America can do, what we can do is a lot. We can do a lot. But it's not going to be in a satisfying, direct way. You know? And it's also not going to have an immediate effect on the conflict that is ongoing. And all of that is very frustrating, but we need to state it up front. So, if you want to make sure or change this dynamic at all, you have to get involved in your local, state, and national races. You know, you gotta volunteer for progressive candidates. You gotta phone bank. You know, we've talked about getting involved on this channel. This is one of the reasons why you get involved. Because the politics and the situation, the military situation in Israel, all flow downstream from American hegemony. All of it. All of it. Israel relies on the diplomatic relationship it has with the United States. It relies on the support it gets from the United States. And without that, it would be in a truly vulnerable position. And if we can use that imbalance to prevent genocide, we have every moral reason to do so. So when I say get involved with local, state, and national races, we are going to be here on this show talking about how you can do that as these elections draw closer. There are going to be spots open to phone bank for candidates big and small, whether it's a state race or a national race or a local race, okay? And we're going to give you an avenue to get involved with those. We're very likely to team up with Progressive Victory on a lot of that. And Progressive Victory provides trainings on how you guys can be more effective organizers, how you can be effective doing phone banking, how you can be effective on door knocking. And we need as many people getting good at that as possible. Because if you're good at it, you can teach someone else how to do it. You can get other people involved. And honestly, if you're like unemployed and looking for something to do, with just a little bit of practice and dedication, you can even get a job full-time, like organizing phone banks or organizing door-to-door knocks. And like a lot of people might be like, oh, well, how many, like, what good does that do? Well, again, when you're sent out to phone bank, when you're sent out to knock on doors, you're knocking on the doors and you're calling up people who are already likely to vote, but who might need a little bit of an extra push to turn out to the poll on election day. This is super important because, again, these smaller races or these national races, this is where our domestic policy gets made, but it's also where our foreign policy gets made.
Enjoy your first Pride event, Natalie Lush.
And what we're talking about here is can be exponential. One person could knock 100 doors. And each one of those doors knocked means one person who is much more likely to go vote. And not only does it mean that person is more likely to go vote, it means their entire household is more likely to go vote. So 100 doors might mean 200 votes. And yeah, you can walk 100 doors in a single session. There are some people who can do even more than that. And if getting out and walking, putting on your walking shoes isn't your thing, you can wear pajamas and do phone banking, and every single person you talk to is more likely to turn out to vote, and their entire household more likely to turn out to vote. When I say that we had so many volunteers from this community, and my community is tiny. My community is small. But we got a critical number of people in our community to do phone banking, to turn out and knock doors. And the number of doors knocked, the number of people called, I've seen the metrics. They made the difference in races for the U.S. Senate. They made the difference in races for the U.S. House. They made the difference in the Wisconsin State Supreme Court race. This is something that happens. We have the power to affect change, not just in the general election, but also in the primaries. And if you can get people to turn out in the general and, cut their teeth and learn more about how to do this, then you can have more people turn out in the midterms where volunteers have even more outsized impact on the success of a campaign. Because keep in mind, chat, Republicans might have money, but money doesn't vote, at least not yet. Okay? We've got people. So I need you all to remember, we have more power than people in positions of power want us to believe. So that if you are dedicated to wanting to do something about this, and you should be, if you have a heart, you should want to end and prevent genocide. you have things you can do. Progressive Victory has trainings that you can do. You can actually start preparing now to get involved in end of the year races in 2023. There's a gigantic race coming up in Virginia that has national implications. Some of these races that are coming up that aren't getting a ton of media attention, they are what is going to determine whether or not people have bodily autonomy in some states. But also, on top of there being domestic good, your vested interest in the bodily autonomy of people in America, these are the people who make and decide our foreign policy and who influence our foreign policy. Right now, we have 4, 5 members of Congress who are brave enough to actually point out that Israel is doing war crimes. When it's plain as day. It's plain as day. They're doing them in the open in front of rolling cameras. We need to elect people with more bravery, with more spine. And we can do that. I promise we can do that. Wait, here we go. I think this is it. There's the command. You can use the command volunteer over in the site chat to get a link to get involved in Progressive Victory. I highly recommend any of you do it. It's a great way to make friends if you're in the market for those. It's also just a great way to get out and do something that actually has a tangible impact. I've worked with them in the past. I will be working with them in the future, I'm sure. Now's the time to get involved. It's always better to have planted a tree 20 years ago, but the best time to plant a tree is now. So, yeah. Now, in case you want to know if Palestinians are or Israelis are on the wrong side of history, here's George W. Bush.
It's going to be chaotic, and it's going to be, look, it's a democracy, and in a democracy, the people's voices matter, and there's going to be a weariness. You watch, the world's going to be, okay, let's negotiate. Israel's got to negotiate. They're not going to negotiate. These people have played their cards. They want to kill as many Israelis as they can, and negotiating with killers is not an option for the elected government of Israel. And so we're just going to have to remain steadfast, but it's not going to take long. It's gone on too long. Surely there's a way to settle this through negotiations. Both sides are guilty. My view is one side is guilty, and it's not Israel.
Again, the majority of people in Gaza,
the
majority of people in Gaza support continuing the ceasefire. A majority of people in Gaza support a two-state solution with the 1967 borders. These negotiations have always been on the table. But frankly, Israel is not interested in meeting those types of negotiations. Because if they did, they would have to remove the illegal settlements. Or the illegal settlements would have to be, would be repossessed by a Palestinian state. And Israel is also not interested in a one-state solution. Otherwise, they would have incorporated the Gaza Strip and the West Bank into Israel. They don't incorporate those places into Israel because they are worried about the demographic shift it would make in the only democracy in the Middle East. They literally don't want Palestinians as citizens of Israel because it would mean they would be able to vote. A majority of people in Gaza are children. Yeah. And yes, there are currently you'll note that there is currently just insane propaganda going on, both public facing propaganda, but also propaganda behind the scenes. Jess is linking to The Intercept's report about J Street, basically trying to muscle Democrats into supporting Israel and not supporting Palestinians and Palestinian rights. And that is what is happening behind the scenes. The moneyed interests, the lobbying groups are exercising their muscle.
This is what all the Shonen ANME were preparing US for chat.
And what gets me here is just they're so brazen about it. Like the propaganda is actually so insane that my jaw dropped when I saw it. My jaw dropped. Pull this up here. Yeah, here it is. So, last night on Leftist Mafia, I talked about how the Israeli state is running advertisements on children's media on YouTube. That wasn't a joke. Here it is. We know that your child cannot read this. We have an important message to tell you as parents. 40 infants were murdered in Israel by the Hamas terrorists, ISIS. Just as you would do anything for your child, we will do everything to protect ours. Now hug your baby and stand with us. Psychotic. Again, if you're wondering how the Nazis were able to prep the German public to be completely at ease with millions of their fellow their neighbors, their friends suddenly going missing, being massacred and mass murdered. This is the type of propaganda that gets that done. This is dehumanizing, and the express purpose of this is to basically make the public at large feel okay with war crimes. This is designed to this is the equivalent of like during the Rwandan genocide. When they would call the opposition, they would call I always get the two sides mixed up in that, I'm sorry. But they would call them cockroaches. They're just cockroaches. Stamp them out. This is the equivalent of that, except it's being broadcast to the world to lull the world into being complicit and complacent with the massacre of Palestinians. Well, I know it was the Tutsi and the Hutu. I just didn't remember which side was which. Now remember when I talked about that feel-good story yesterday about the 95-year-old Israeli man who is being pulled out into the reserves to boost morale, and it was portrayed as a heartwarming story, and then everyone found out that he, was actually part of a terrorist organization that tried to ally itself with Hitler twice during World War II, and also tried to ally itself with Mussolini, and also tried to ally itself with Joseph Stalin, and prided itself on killing civilians. Like, explicitly prided itself on being a terrorist organization that just killed Arab civilians. Okay? Well, here he is. We have an example now of his uplifting, rallying cry to the IDF troops. Sorry, I'm gonna turn off the volume, and I'm gonna just read it off as it plays. Be triumphant and finish them off. And don't leave anyone behind. Erase the memory of them. Erase them, their families, mothers, and children. These animals can no longer live. Nowadays, we have no excuse. Tomorrow, Hezbollah could send airstrikes on us.
These events need to be documented.
And the Arabs here could attack us. So we have no excuse. Every Jew with a weapon should go out and kill them. If you have an Arab neighbor, don't wait. Go to his home and shoot him. Attack them and don't wait for them to fire airstrikes at us. And for the Iron Dome to activate. Attack them before that. We want to invade, not like before. We want to enter and destroy what is in the one after it. With all the forces, complete destruction. Enter and destroy. As you can see, we will witness things we've never dreamed of. And again, when he's saying that, he's not saying, sunshine and daisies. He's talking about, how he's longed for the day of genocide against the Palestinian people. That's his dream. His dream is mass murdering 2 million people, half of whom are children. Let them drop bombs on them and erase them. All the prophecies sent by the prophets are about to occur. Now, if you're wondering about that part, there is a sect of Judaism that believes, the reconstruction of Israel as a nation is going to herald the coming of the Messiah. Because again, in Christianity, Jesus is the Messiah, but in Judaism, the Messiah hasn't come yet. So, yeah. It is. Again, I've been saying this is genocide, this is genocide. The IDF picked this guy and is sending him around to other IDF soldiers to tell them that. To tell them that this is what they are being sent to do. This is not going to be a ground invasion of Gaza to just take out Hamas. Already today, throughout the day, we've seen ground incursions into Gaza by boots on the ground, allegedly in clashes with Hamas. Again, it's likely that as all internet access is cut off in Gaza by tomorrow, the invasion is going to begin, and it's going to be a massacre. It is unconscionable. Yeah, it's currently Seems to be around 6:30 in the morning. Saturday. In Gaza. Just everyone's waking up and it's going to be a horrific day. Hasn't the massacre already begun? No. Civilians are being killed. But the reason I say that the massacre hasn't begun is because, like, again, we're not going to see that happen until the boots are in Gaza. They are committing war crimes. That is true. The white phosphorus has been used, verified by multiple international agencies. But what we're seeing is just the prelude to the massacres. What we are seeing is indiscriminate bombing. But following the mass evacuation order, while thousands of Gazans did indeed flee south, the overwhelming majority of people in Gaza, in North Gaza, stayed in North Gaza. Because they know there's nowhere for them to go if they go into South Gaza, and if they do leave to go to South Gaza, they get bombed anyway. Again, 70 people were killed trying to flee northern Gaza after Israel dropped the pamphlets. This isn't like what we are seeing right now is horrible. But this is just the beginning of it. This is just the beginning of it. The IDF is going to mass bomb. They are currently bombing indiscriminately, but what we are seeing is nothing near what they're talking about yet. Their rhetoric is talking about turning the Gaza Strip into a parking lot. They are talking about leveling the entire strip. What we're seeing is not that yet. What we're seeing is softening it up. That's what we are seeing right now. I don't think any of us are ready for what we're gonna see, because this is what you do before a ground invasion against an equivalent force. This is the tactic you do for an equivalent force. You bomb them, you soften them up, and then you intensify the bombing and the shelling right before you send in ground forces. Fembro, you did not miss the analog horror segment. That's going to come up as kind of like when we're done having talked about Israel, Palestine. We'll be relaxing with analog horror in honor of Friday the 13th. I've seen stuff from Bosnia, Kosovo, so I kind of get the idea. But yeah, this will be brutality on another level. Yeah, it's... I've seen people on the YouTube Gaza live stream that cheer on this genocide. What? You've seen people on the Gaza live stream cheer on the mass murder of people in Gaza?
You know where the link is, chat.
The Israeli right is so disgusting. I have to keep reminding myself that at least some Israelis are redeemable. They are. And what we're seeing, by the way, is that the majority of Israelis want Netanyahu to resign. The majority of Israelis do not approve of what is happening with Hamas, or not with Hamas, with the Israeli military. They do not approve of, the war crimes being done against Palestinians. However, what we're seeing right now is the result of 20 years, 30 years even, because Netanyahu, I believe, came into power in the 90s. Around 30 years of Netanyahu consolidating power and surrounding himself with yes men. There's no one to pump the brakes on this. And frankly, Netanyahu is being put in a position where he is afraid of looking weak, and he is being given an awful lot of power that would allow him to subvert judicial,
Another site, chat friendo.
subvert judicial control of his office. So in a desperate situation like this, he is very eager to flex power and to look powerful. And I mean, frankly, all indications are, to me, is that he is going to massacre the Palestinian people to further his own political ambition in a desperate bid to both maintain and seize more power. Our government didn't care when we complained about Iraq. A million people marched on parliament, and we still went to war. The powers do as they please. Democracy is a lie. I disagree. I disagree. Because part of the problem is, a million people marching, that's great. But what we need is a million people, backing their local, state, and national progressives. We need people doing that so that we can counter the insane amounts of money that the Israeli government spends lobbying the United States politicians. Like that, at the end of the day, we need people to call, we need people to knock doors. And we need to exert as much pressure as possible. It's really the only thing we can do that is meaningful in the slightest. I know that what Biden has done has been very small. It's been very small shifts in rhetoric over the last 24 hours. I hope. Honestly, again, remember when I was telling you yesterday that the humanitarian corridor and just an ethnic cleansing of the Gaza Strip would be like a best case scenario at this point? Well, now it's today, and that humanitarian corridor is still closed. And the Biden administration knows that that corridor is closed, and that the Gazan people have nowhere to go. The Palestinians have nowhere to go. And I do think that Biden will put diplomatic pressure on Israel when news reports start coming out of massacres. That's basically inevitable. And I think the people in the White House know that. Some of the information that I have indicates that there are already preparations underway. Remember the carrier strike group that was dispatched. Apparently, there are 2 of them. One of the aircraft carriers is currently alleged. Again, take with massive grains of salt. Is currently fitting itself to be used as a hospital for Palestinians. There are clearly steps underway currently that indicate that there are people in positions of power that know what's about to happen. I don't see how this will be good for Israel in the long run. Well, it's not. Like it's not going to be good for Israel in the long run. But that's because Israel is run by fascists, and fascists will do what is short-term expedient to maintain their power.
Apologies in advance for spamming the link chat.
I really do think we need more people turning out for local elections. Yeah, Celestial Heart. Like, a lot of people don't know, but if you can get like 10, 15, 25 dedicated people in a local level election to like volunteer to phone bank and knock doors, you are already like in a better spot than around 90% of political campaigns that are local or even state. Like, even on a state level, if over one session, 25 people each go knock 100 doors, that's just one session. That's 2,500 voters that are much more likely to vote now. And some of the elections that we're seeing right now, chat, are decided by, a dozen votes, 100 votes. You have more power than the people in power want you to believe. Well, melodic codes, Netanyahu stands to benefit quite a bit.
Progressive victories.
Netanyahu stands to benefit quite a bit. Because keep in mind, Netanyahu is currently under investigation for corruption. And if he's found guilty, like, he would basically lose everything he has and possibly face jail time. Now, he doesn't want to do that, obviously, and he wants to maintain power. This is one of the ways that he can look strong on Palestinians and also wrap up the loose end of Hamas in one fell swoop. This is effectively, in his calculations, a way for him to maintain power, look strong, and effectively solve the problem of Palestinians. This is his final solution that will benefit him personally. And if that costs the lives of 2.2 Palestinians, he does not care, because he does not view them as people. All of the rhetoric around this indicates that they do not view them as people. Again, this is the who they're sending around to rally the IDF troops, to boost their morale. We're gonna play this video again, because it's just that unbelievable. Erase the memory of them. Erase them, their families, mothers, and children. These animals can no longer live. Tomorrow, Hezbollah could send airstrikes on us, and Arabs could attack us. So we have no excuse. Every Jew with a weapon should go out and kill them. Again, he's not talking about just your run-of-the-mill... He's not talking about the IDF anymore. He's openly advocating for just random violence against anyone who is Arab, anyone who is Palestinian. He's saying if you see a Palestinian child, you should kill them. You should murder them. These people do not view Palestinians as human beings. And, I mean... this has been also doing the rounds. This is allegedly an Israeli man mocking the lack of electricity, fuel, food, and water available to people in Gaza. They do not view them as people. This would be mistreatment to a dog. Like, if you were doing this to a dog, it would be considered animal abuse. This is, like, it's evil shit. This is Hitler shit. Well, and that's another thing, right, Jess? You bring up a really good point in riverboat.gg chat, which is that this isn't just about Netanyahu's desperate bid for power. There are moneyed interests pushing for this, right? Because, frankly, they want to roll in and demolish...
A short message.
They want to roll in and demolish Palestinian homes and businesses and build gentrified new stuff. And they want to appeal to Israeli settlers who have more money and wealth, who are coming in from all over the world and need a place to live and need places to shop and need things to buy. And they want to have all of that and consolidate their power over that. And they don't, and frankly, those dirty Palestinians that they hate so much are an obstacle for their profit. So, the more business-minded Israeli far-right is actually incredibly happy with the prospect of a ground invasion of Palestinian territory, because basically this is Nakba Part 2. Okay? Already, what they are looking to do is to push Palestinians out of Gaza at the barrel of a gun and take care of the problem once and for all. And the businesses, they see that this is happening and they're salivating. They are excited. This is an exciting investment opportunity. Here's a segment that aired on ABC. But apparently was not allowed to be reposted anywhere, but a journalist managed to get a hold of it. Come on. Oh, English subtitles. We do need those.
Now, we're seeing these protests all around the world, from Arab communities and Muslim communities, angry, sad at what they're seeing. Can you just give us a sense of the depth of feeling, why people are coming out in their numbers? I think the protest that we're witnessing today in Amman, for instance, is one of the biggest I certainly have ever seen. Just give us a sense of how people feel about what's going on.
Absolutely. I mean, people are devastated. We are talking about hundreds of thousands, millions of lives, millions of families that are experiencing war, millions of people who have lost entire families have been wiped off of the public record by the Israeli regime in the past 7 days. People are devastated, people are afraid for their loved ones. And it's not just Arabs and Muslims. This is not just Arabs and Muslims. This is all people of good conscience around the world rising up against war, against genocide, against escalation. This is what's happening. And if you've been looking at any Western media, UK, USA, in the past 1 week, you'll see images of Palestinian children murdered by the Israeli regime with headlines that will suggest that these are Israeli children. You'll see images of Palestinian residential buildings being bombarded and blown to bits with headlines that suggest that these are Israeli buildings suffering terrorism. There is manufacturing consent happening all over the world, but I have faith that people are not idiots. People can tell the truth when they see it. I mean, the images speak for themselves. I just want journalists around the world to do their jobs. We're not asking
Is this a real-time feed? Yes. So much smoke in the sky. This is just so hard to watch. Yeah, I mean, it really is. And I mean, chat, the reason why I'm reading a lot into Biden's positioning and the internal, like, what the actual, like, assets the United States has on the ground are doing is because it represents a pretty huge divergence from what America is saying broadly, what the broader, State Department PR teams are putting out. Biden recognizing that there is a huge potential for war crimes here publicly. Biden recognizing that Palestinians are human beings who do not deserve to just be slaughtered en masse. Well, it's a pretty big divergence from what the White House said earlier today.
What is the president's message to...
Okay, the pool should start leaving, and then we're going to take this last question.
Thank you, Green. What is the president's message to members of Congress who seem to be equating the Hamas terror attack with actions that were previously taken by Israel?
Say that one more time. Everybody's moving around. I apologize.
What is the president's message to members of Congress who seem to be equating the Hamas terror attack with actions that were previously taken by Israel?
Look, here's the thing, and which congressional members?
Well, there have been some members of Congress who have called for a ceasefire, and they have not gone as far as backing the administration's call for support for Israel.
So look, I've seen some of those
There aren't subtitles on this video. I'm sorry.
statements this weekend, and we're going to continue to be very clear. We believe they're wrong. We believe they're repugnant, and we believe they're disgraceful. Our condemnation belongs squarely with terrorists who have brutally murdered, raped, kidnapped hundreds of Israelis. There can be no equivocation about that. There are not two sides here. There are not two sides. President Biden has been clear on where he has stood. You heard from him directly today. You heard from him also on Saturday on this. There's been multiple statements from this president, and he's taking action to provide additional support to ensure that Israel has what they need to defend themselves. All right.
Now, you know, that was all delivered in such a calm, reassuring tone. Let's just listen to the middle part here one more time.
And they have not gone as far as backing the administration's call for support for Israel.
So look, I've seen some of those statements this weekend, and we're going to continue to be very clear. We believe they're wrong. We believe they're repugnant, and we believe they're disgraceful.
Wrong, repugnant, and disgraceful. The calls for a ceasefire, the calls to stop bombing children and dropping white phosphorus on civilians, to stop bombing ambulances and hospitals and people fleeing the bombs. Those are wrong, repugnant, and reprehensible. There are no words. There are no words. The representative of the White House saying that it is wrong, repugnant, and reprehensible to call for peace. When what is clearly about to happen is mass murder on a scale seldom seen in human history. Yeah, calling for that to not happen is wrong, repugnant, and reprehensible. I'm sorry. Frankly, this lady should lose her job for this. This is. I can't, she's saying a call to not genocide is wrong. So, from this point, where, the expectations are through the floor, seeing a modicum of movement from Biden, recognizing that war crimes could happen and are happening, recognition that Palestinians are people, these small things mean a lot when contrasted with this. But, at the end of the day, I am hoping there is a line. I am hoping that there is a line that Israel can't cross while maintaining U.S. support. Because if the United States can stand by Israel and support them thoroughly throughout the course of them massacring 2.2 million people, I hope there is one. I hope there is one for the Palestinians' sake. Because if it doesn't, well, then 2.2 million people are about to die, and there's nothing we can do about it. Has anyone been confronted about this yet? Like, has anyone been, so you're cool with Palestinian children being slaughtered because they're Palestinian? Is that fine with you? No one has been that, no one has been that direct, no, as far as I know. Although there was one interview today that might have come close to that. We're going to watch an episode of Up Front, where Mark Lamont Hill, who's like one of the best news guys working currently, he had on a spokesperson for Hamas and a former Israeli deputy foreign minister to grill them about war crimes. So we're going to watch that. He might be one of the only people who has actively done what you just suggested, confronting people with the reality. Yeah, AC Saul, I'm afraid of that too.
October 7th, Hamas launched a barrage of rockets from Gaza, followed by a coordinated incursion into Israel by Hamas fighters. Scores of unarmed civilians were killed and many taken hostage. In response to the attack, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu swore, quote, a mighty vengeance against the group. Israel has since retaliated with a complete siege of Gaza, launching airstrikes that razed entire districts, killing hundreds and injuring thousands in the Palestinian enclave. On today's show, we'll delve deep into the conflict. Coming up in the second half of the show, we'll speak to the former Deputy Foreign Minister for Israel and former Foreign Policy Advisor to Netanyahu, Danny Ayalon. With us first is Senior Spokesperson for Hamas, Osama Hamdan. Osama Hamdan, Senior Spokesperson for Hamas, thank you so much for joining me on Up Front.
Thank you.
On October 7th, Hamas launched an attack when they fired thousands of rockets into Israel. Militants entered the country and took scores of civilians hostage, including women, children, and the elderly. While the right of resistance is absolutely secured for all occupied people under international law, the use of force is not unlimited, and targeting civilians and taking hostages are war crimes. How can you justify attacking civilian targets?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. I have to say that this is the story from the Israeli side, which is not really true. I have to turn you to Oren Zeif, who is an Israeli journalist. He was today in Kfar Azza settlement, and he said there is no evidences that Hamas slaughtered children. I'm sorry that the Israeli government is using that to commit its crimes in Gaza. So this is the first part of the answer. We have also some Israelis are telling this has not happened, and it's a story, fake story used to kill more Palestinians. But this is
right, but the question was, how do you justify attacking civilian targets? That was the actual question. One second, sorry. The question was, how can you justify attacking civilian targets?
You are asking the wrong question.
No. The question was, how can you justify attacking civilian targets?
You are asking the wrong question.
We may disagree on what the right question is, but I would like you to answer this question. How do you justify attacking civilian targets?
This is a wrong question, and I'm not going to the same game of the Israelis.
Well, I'm asking a very clear question about civilians.
Okay.
Let me ask a very direct question. Have any civilians been killed?
Well, I don't know exactly, because this is what's told by the Israelis. What I'm telling you, that for this Israeli government...
You just cited Orange...
Again, Hamas is a terrorist group of fundamentalist jihadis who want to mass murder people. That is part of their charter as an organization. They prey upon the desire for liberation by the Palestinian people. They are a tick that actively hurt Palestinian liberation efforts. They siphon off the passion and the youth in order to indoctrinate people into a death cult. And they are controlled opposition funded by Benjamin Netanyahu, who has sent the group over $1 billion over the last, decade. And they are not to be trusted, and I feel like that should go without saying, right? Like, Hamas is not to be trusted about, oh, did you commit war crimes? No, war crimes, what war crimes? No, they are not to be trusted on this. So it is nice to see that Mark Lamont Hill is, making him squirm, because clearly he can't tell the truth. On the flip side, Israel PR is not to be trusted either. So we'll see how he handles the Israeli official later on in this interview.
And Zef, he says civilians were killed.
No, he didn't say. He said no evidence that children were slaughtred. I don't know.
He said dozens of bodies of Israelis murdered in their homes.
Excuse me.
Those were his words.
You are wasting the time. It's your time. It's not my time. You are wasting the time.
All right, let's pause for a moment, sir. My question is, if you find out that civilians have been killed, would you consider that justified or would you consider that unjustified?
There is 300 children have been killed today in Gaza by the Israelis. 200 women have been killed today by the Israelis in Gaza. 1,200 children were injured.
By the way, this is him answering, yes, it's justified to kill women and children. You know, a lot of women and children get killed by Israelis, so of course it's justified to kill women and children. Otherwise, he would just say, no, it's not justified, move on. You know?
1,000 women were injured today, just today and yesterday in Gaza. You are asking me the wrong question. You have to ask about what is happening in Gaza, which is under the siege for the last 17 years, which is under the offensive Israeli attack for the last 4 days. You keep asking about the Israelis, why you don't ask about the Palestinians.
So that's a fair question, sir. That is a fair question.
Excuse me, I have to continue. You are asking about the Israelis. You don't ask about the Palestinians. No one cares about the Palestinians. This is the story. The story is the occupation. 75 years of occupation for the Palestinians. We have to talk about the occupation.
That's a good idiom, Gayfash. When someone avoids stepping on the cracks, you can be assured that they see the cracks very clearly. Yeah.
And how the Palestinians are looking for this occupation, and how can we make an end for this occupation? This is the story. It's not the story about what you are asking about.
Okay, I understand your perspective. To be clear, after this interview, I will be interviewing a representative of the Israeli military, and I will be asking him about Israel's war crimes. I absolutely acknowledge that Israel has committed war crimes. In fact, I have written a book with a whole chapter about Gaza and the war crimes that have been committed against Gaza there. So please do not suggest to me that I do not take this issue seriously. However, let me finish. I allowed you.
Thank you for clarifying
I allowed you to finish.
Thank you for clarifying that.
But so now that we've clarified that, but sir, let me.
You can't compare.
I understand.
Okay.
I'm not comparing anything. I'm not comparing anything. But please allow me to finish. My question for you is
this is Al
living
Jazeera.
Inside of a settlement a legitimate military target for Hamas?
According to the international law, the settlers are not civilians.
So, sir, again, human rights organization.
Which, again, very careful language, because not just illegal settlers were attacked. Israeli citizens, innocent civilians, were attacked within Israel's borders, not in just the settlements, though some of the settlements were also attacked.
Have said the illegal status of settlements under international humanitarian law does not negate the rights of the civilians living there. The fact that a person lives in a settlement, whether legal or not, does not make him
Yes, I believe European civilians, as well as several American civilians, were kidnapped.
Or her a legitimate military target? So, in light of the fact that human rights organizations would argue that even
Oh yeah, Gayfesh, this is a two-part interview. He interviewed the spokesperson for Hamas first, and then he interviewed the Israeli former foreign minister.
if settlements are illegal, the people living inside of them are still considered civilians. How do you see moving forward Hamas's vision of whether or not settlements are legitimate military targets?
Well, the legitimate thing which I believe in, that Palestine is our land. Our people are living on our land, challenging the occupation for the last 75 years. On those 75 years, the women, the children were killed by the Israeli soldiers, the Israeli settlers. Their homeland was taken. They were replaced by Israelis who came from everywhere in the world. They talk different languages, and they claim that this land is for them. If you ask any one of them about the grave of his father, he will take you to Poland or to Argentina. But if you ask any Palestinian about the grave of his 17th grandfather, he will take you to some place in Palestine, showing you the graves, telling you, this is where my 17th grandfather was buried, or maybe before that. We are in this land from the days of Jesus Christ. Don't ask me.
Yeah, Mark Lamont Hill has been great for a very, very long time. I would recommend his other content and his books.
About those settlers and those soldiers who are killing my people every day, every time. And this is the fact which creates the resistance of the Palestinians. The Palestinians did not start the war.
Let's talk about the Israeli response to the Hamas attack, which has been horrific. Israel is bombing Gaza and declared a complete siege. It's cut off food, fuel, and water from being admitted to over 2 million people. Thousands of Palestinians are going to die. One resident from Khan Yunis said, this is a bloody war that is different from previous wars. What is going on right now is total annihilation. We see this horrific response by the Israeli government. My question for you is, have the actions of Hamas over the past week made things worse for Palestinians on the ground?
The Israelis have done this before. They done that in 2014. They cut the electricity from Gaza in 2014 for 17 days. They cut the aids for the hospitals.
Hey, Metal Kitty Mom.
In 2014, 2,500 Palestinians were killed.
Yeah, no, Mark Lamont Hill is principled. You know, like he is a progressive, he's a leftist, and he believes in basic human rights for everybody. And you would think that that last one would be like a bare minimum, but it's not. There are a lot of people in news media who are willing to sell their souls for a paycheck.
In 2021, more than 1,000 Palestinians were killed. No one remembers the numbers because they are only Palestinians. But I want to tell you, they were shocked by what had happened to their army. 11 points, military points were attacked by the militants of Hamas. The soldiers were killed or being taken as war prisoners, and the Israelis were shocked. This is the main troops attacking Gaza for the last 10 years. They fall down in a few hours. This is a shock. They want to get back the image of Israel army. They want to show everyone that Israel can destroy everyone.
That's an interesting point, sir. That's an important point you're making. You're saying that Israel sort of commits to a certain kind of response when it looks bad, that Israel responds disproportionately, and that Israel already wants to use this as a pretext for destroying the Palestinian people. I'm saying if you know that's going to happen, then how do you calculate the decision to launch an attack knowing that a university is going to be bombed, knowing that power is going to be cut off, knowing that fuel is going to be cut off, knowing that people are going to die because of the Israeli response? If you know that, why do you still make the attack, particularly when the Palestinian people don't have a say in whether or not that's going to happen?
Absolute king shit. Like just to put this into context, He is interviewing a terrorist. And just, hey, Mr. Terrorist, how does this make sense? Because the thing is, it doesn't. The only way that it adds up is if Hamas believes that this crisis, all of this death, will radicalize even more people to join their group. And will make them even more popular amongst Palestinians in Gaza. Because they are the only like force that can express the rage and grief of these people who are being indiscriminately killed. See ya, Omnichrome. Like the calculus of Hamas here is, well, we do mass murder, we take hostages, and then presumably we negotiate for stuff in exchange for the hostages, and then we recruit off the backs of the tragedies that are sure to follow. That's the real answer. But that Hamas spokesperson can't say that, so what we're going to get here is going to be gibberish.
This is a good question. You know, the fact that the Israelis are killing the Palestinians on all the ways, all the times. For example, in West Bank in the last 10 months, more than 500 Palestinians were killed. Most of them were civilians. They were shooted in the streets, just demonstrating peacefully against the Israeli troops. The fact which everyone have to understand it, that this occupation is killing the Palestinians all the time. He's not giving them any chance.
Yeah. So his response here is essentially, Palestinians die every day. Might as well make sure Palestinians die and benefit Hamas.
To have normal life. He's not giving them the chance to be independent and to have...
Valhalla Vidya, that is exactly what I think. I think that Netanyahu has seen Hamas through, that this is the final time that Netanyahu is going to need them or use them to further his own political ambitions. He is perfectly set up to do basically his fascist power play. And as part of that, he is going to clean house. He is going to wipe out Hamas. He's going to wipe out any Palestinian citizens in Gaza. And he's going to unite the country by, formally annexing these occupied territories. I think this is what his end game is. His end game is liquidation, because he thinks it will make him look strong. It will get rid of the inconvenience of Hamas. And he's sacrificing a pawn in order to take on the powers of the queen, which only makes sense if you know chess rules. Can we just skip to the part where he's on trial in The Hague? Unfortunately, no.
Their independent sovereign state, even after 30 years of signature of...
Yes, Benjamin Netanyahu explicitly funded Hamas. To the tune of, over $1 billion. Benjamin Netanyahu, in 2019, made public statements that if you are against the Palestinian cause, then you should be in favor of funding Hamas. He has said that publicly. GamerG, what I worry about here is that you do not assemble, 500,000 troops to invade the Gaza Strip. If you are interested in at all de-escalating. You don't use white phosphorus. If you are being discerning in your targets. Half a million troops. To put that in perspective, chat, that would be like a full mobilization of all the reservists in the United States plus our active duty troops. Is Netanyahu a religious fundamentalist? Yes. He is such a religious... Again, to put it in perspective for you guys, chat, Benjamin Netanyahu is such a religious fundamentalist that he has argued that Adolf Hitler did not intend to mass murder the Jews. It was only because he was bamboozled by the Muslims that Adolf Hitler decided to massacre the Jews, to do the Holocaust. He has given speeches where he engages in Holocaust denial like that. That is the degree to which he is a religious fundamentalist.
Of Oslo Agreement. He's not implementing any international resolutions. He doesn't care about the international law. So we are facing this fact. The Israelis are killing you if you are treating them peacefully or if you are resisting them. And at the end of the day, the occupation is still there. So it's better to resist than being slaughtered daily without even resisting the occupation.
What was the goal of last week's actions? What was the immediate goal of last week's actions? What would you say the target or goal was?
The goal is to make an...
I don't know. I don't know that I would say Netanyahu is pro-Hitler. I would say that he engages in Holocaust denial, and is aligned with, other fascists, like Hitler and Mussolini. Yes, he is a fascist, and his party is fascist.
End for the Israeli attacks against the Palestinians, to make an end for the Israeli attacks on Jerusalem, Al-Aqsa, and West Bank, taking over the lands, and to lift the siege on Gaza. The Israelis are planning for a long occupation on Palestine, and I think if they don't get the lesson from what had happened in the last 4 days, this army will not protect them. Their violence will not protect them. Even if they were supported by the United States, if they want to be protected, they have to acknowledge the Palestinian rights and to implement the international resolutions which gave the Palestinian people their rights without negotiations. Those are rights. No one can negotiate our rights.
Osama Hamdan, thank you so much for joining me on Upfront.
And, to give him credit, there is some degree to which he is correct. This is kind of the siren song of Hamas, is that they are correct in a lot of different ways. It's just that, they don't really tell their young, again, mostly teenage recruits about the wider game plan, that they're being used. That it's effectively a death cult. They use this, oh, you are a freedom fighter, you're fighting to end the occupation, but then they do something that there's no meaningful way that attack was going to end the occupation or get Palestinians human rights. Not one at all. This is an absolute tragedy, but I fear Iran could get directly involved and cause a global conflict. Iran is not going to get directly involved. That is precisely the reason why Biden dispatched 2 carrier strike groups to the Middle East. It's to dissuade Iran from getting involved. As far as I understand it, the Jewish people were fleeing from being wiped out, and the Palestinians welcomed them to their lands and helped to defend them as well. Do I have that right? Not necessarily. Not necessarily, no. Basically, yeah, the Palestinians were under the rule of the British through World War II. A lot of Jewish folks and Jewish diaspora went to Israel because Zionism was a growing ideology, and they went with the hope of establishing an explicitly Jewish state. But when you get there and people are already living there and there's already a state there, well, that's kind of a problem to establishing a Jewish state. So a lot of them became very militant, both to oppose the Nazis and also to fight the British and to fight the Arabs and to fight basically everybody. It basically became like a giant bloodbath. Following World War II, the State of Israel, founded by essentially the UN, ever since those borders have been expanding, both in response to counterattacks by Israel after other countries declared war on them, and also, just general land seizures and expelling Palestinians. You don't just come across a bunch of empty land in the Middle East, and suddenly have that just doesn't happen. The land has been occupied for thousands of years. Like, if you want the land, there are people already there, and you got to kick them out. And if you want it to be majority Jewish, well, the vast majority of people who were already there were not Jewish, so you gotta kick them out too. That's where you get events like the Nakba, which is basically the mass displacement and ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. And what we're seeing now is basically a second Nakba, or an attempted second Nakba. I'm afraid that it's going to be... I'm afraid that it's going to escalate from ethnic cleansing to genocide, because there's nowhere for them to go. There's nowhere for Palestinians to go.
Thank you.
We tried repeatedly to get an Israeli army spokesperson on the show to respond to Hamas, but they canceled the scheduled interviews. For more on the developments in Gaza, we are joined by Israel's former deputy foreign minister and a former foreign policy advisor to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah. Also, a lot of Jewish people post-World War II were effectively expelled from European lands because, again, it is really, really hard to overstate how anti-Semitic Europe is. Like, that is a prejudice that goes back 1,000 years. 2,000 years even.
Danny Ayalon. Danny Ayalon, thank you so much for joining me on Upfront.
My pleasure.
Danny, last Saturday, the 7th, Hamas launched a devastating attack. Thousands of rockets were fired towards Israel, and hundreds of Hamas fighters crossed into the country. There are reports of horrific killings of Israeli civilians, a clear violation of international law. In response, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu threatened to turn the Gaza Strip into, quote, rubble, and the government announced a, quote, complete siege of the enclave. Since then, we've seen mass bombing in Gaza with reports that hundreds of civilians have been killed. Now, while the actions of Hamas are a clear, and I want to emphasize that, a clear violation of international law, isn't the collective punishment of all Gazans also, by definition, a war crime?
Not really, because the situation is very clear. As you mentioned, rightly so, Hamas perpetrated an attack, which was a surprise attack. The IDF was caught unprepared, and they got a major...
Which, by the way, more and more stories are coming out confirming that Egypt apparently warned the Israeli military that these attacks were coming 8 days before they happened. The Israeli military, for unexplained reasons, did not respond to this intel. Which, again, is what leads me to, if I'm going to be slightly conspiratorial, it's what leads me to believe that Netanyahu allowed this to happen.
Major victory for the first 24 hours. But who was this victory against? Babies and children and whole families that were massacred in bed. The IDF was nowhere to be seen. When the IDF came back now, they pushed them back into the Gaza. Now, the problem with the Hamas is that they're committing a double war crime, because they are targeting only civilians. And they're using their own civilians, the poor Palestinian of Gaza, as human shields. And what Israel did gave them a fair warning. And I think this is the only way to do.
Hey, Jack and chat, I just wanted to pop in and remind chat that even though I want with all my heart to stay plugged into politics all the time, that you don't have to feel bad if you need to take a break. Politics will be here when you come back. I just want you to be here too, so take care of yourselves, chat, and yes, I'm okay. I'm going to take a couple of days off myself. Yeah, again, it is very easy to be roped into a black hole of this content, to obsess over it, despite the fact that we are half a world away and there is nothing we can do in the immediate sense to bring an end to these tragedies. Make sure you are taking care of yourselves. Ground yourself. Go outside. Touch grass. Feel the rain on your face. You know, get a little bit of exercise. It will help. I promise. Neither the Israeli government nor the Hamas terrorists care anything about the people being slaughtered. No. Yeah, 100%, Jess. There is complete and utter dehumanization that is happening.
Do with them is we told the Gazan people to clear the area temporarily so we can go and take Hamas out. And then, of course, they can come back.
Yes, because as we all know, it's very easy for 1.1 million people in 24 hours to vacate the place they live in while they're being bombed.
So this, by definition, is not a war crime. We understand the plight of the Palestinians. They deserve their dignity and everything else. But nothing justifies butchering families. You know, this day, as you mentioned...
Wow, it's wild that you mention you believe in the rights and the autonomy of the Palestinian people, and then you seem to conflate Palestinian people with Hamas, because you're saying nothing justifies butchering families, which is what you're doing to Palestinians. You're doing that to Palestinians right now. You've actually butchered more families than Hamas has at this point in this conflict.
Mentioned 7th of October was the day that more Jews were killed in 24 hours than any other day since the Holocaust. So you see,
I mean, without question, respectfully, this is a devastating moment, an extraordinary act of violence that again is a violation of international law. But you said a couple of things that I want to push you on. The idea of collective punishment is one of the things that we're talking about here. Electricity has been cut, power has been cut, fuel has been cut. The Gazan people right now are being punished for the actions of Hamas. How is that not by definition collective punishment?
Two things. First of all, Hamas has turned Gaza into an enemy state. So there is...
It's not... It can't be an enemy state when you don't recognize its statehood and don't allow it autonomy. It cannot definitionally be a state when you have exerted pressure for 60 years to deny its statehood. Valhalla Vidya, maybe. I really, really hated the original Lords of the Fallen, but the remaster looks like it might be pretty solid.
There's no law, nothing in international law that compels a country you are in a war with to supply them the electricity. Now, what do they use the electricity for?
They use the electricity for their homes and hospitals, ding dong. Now, it's very interesting to me that this guy is portrayed, because again, you will not see a sitting Israeli politician acknowledge Gaza or Palestine as a state. Will this be a segment eventually? Yes. Likely tomorrow I'll be sitting down and cutting segments and getting a lot of this stuff up in the near future.
As an occupying power, international law does say that you have certain responsibilities by law. But before we get there, even if we'll hold it for a moment, the power thing, there are residential buildings being hit. There are hospitals being hit. This is a densely populated area. The idea of being able to run away or to escape or go to a safe area seems impossible. Also, according to your own military representatives, you've abandoned the idea of knocking on roofs, that is to say giving a warning of dropping a non-explosive munition on buildings before people go. So people aren't getting a warning. They have nowhere to go. Residential buildings, schools, and hospitals are being hit. How is this not, again, an act of collective punishment? And how is this not a target of civilian, unless, of course, you're regarding everybody in Gaza as an enemy combatant?
Okay, well, I hear you. But again, what we gave the population is a fair warning. What would you do? You know, what would you do?
Appreciate it, socially, Maddie.
I just want to make sure we're on the same page here. Benjamin Netanyahu told everyone to leave the area. Where were they to go?
Okay, very, I mean, this is thought out. It's not something.
Yeah, again, there are no safe places to go. One of the things the United States has been negotiating on behind the scenes have been designated safe zones that will not be bombed. But Israel has not agreed to those.
Something that we tell them, go to the beaches, go drown yourselves, God forbid. Not at all. There is a huge expense, almost endless space in the Sinai desert, just on the other side of Gaza. The idea is...
Are you fucking serious, dude? Oh yeah, just go into the desert. I'm sorry, sir. Have you read your holy book? I think there might be an entire expanse about how terrible it is to live in a desert after having been exiled from your homeland. Yeah, there's endless space in the middle of the desert. Just go into the desert, Fivehead. Just go into the desert and die. You won't get bombed out there. You also won't get water, but you won't get bombed. What, motherfucker?
And this is not the first time it will be done. The idea is for them to leave over to the open areas where we and the international community will prepare the infrastructure, tent cities with food and with water. You know what? Just like for the refugees.
What's really interesting about his phrasing here is that Israel and the international community will prepare. Will prepare. Meaning there's nothing prepared right now. Meaning there is nothing out there. You are advocating them go into the desert and just wait for your good graces to not let them die. Why on earth would they trust the people who are bombing their homes into oblivion? Who are currently cutting food and water and electricity and fuel and bombing hospitals and ambulances and schools and UN targets. Or not UN targets, oh my god, UN positions. We will prepare. You can't say we will prepare it. They were given 24 hours. 24 hours. There aren't, there aren't even camps they can go to. There's nothing for them. He's pulling this out of his ass. And even if he believes that this is true, it is still horrific. Trust us, bro. We've killed thousands of people and are very happily killing anyone in a school or a hospital. But trust me, bro. We got you. Just wander off into the desert. You'll be fine.
Of Syria that fled the butchering of Assad a few years ago to Turkey. Turkey received 2 million of them. This is the idea. Now, Egypt will have to play ball here because once the population...
Again, he's like, oh, well, they'll just go into Egypt. Egypt does not have the infrastructure to handle 2 million refugees or even 1 million refugees. They do not have the infrastructure. Guys, here's something for you to know about the Palestinian people, okay? Following the Nakba, all right? Following the Great Catastrophe in 1948, there are still people living in camps as a result of the Nakba. There are still refugee camps around today, almost 100 years later, of Nakba refugees around in countries bordering Israel. Yeah, just go live in the camps. And again, those camps do not have the infrastructure to support just 1 million more people showing up out of the blue. Just, you know, we're only asking for you to leave your homes and your everything you own to flee into another country so we can bomb everything you leave behind into dust and turn it into a giant mall.
Is out of sight, then we can go. You know what what Hamas did?
When you said the population out of sight, is that practically possible in such a densely populated area? And 40, I mean, you have 2 million people in a densely populated enclave. 47%
Yeah, we covered that one,
of the
Mr.
inhabitants are children. Is it reasonable or plausible to think that all those people are going to relocate to this?
Also, yes, to reiterate, they were bombing anyone who listened to them and was leaving northern Gaza. They actively targeted people leaving northern Gaza and bombed them. They have, he's talking about like, oh, Egypt will have to play ball here, when Israel is actively bombing the only border crossing with Egypt that is currently closed.
Excluded area and be safe from a bombing attack. And again, we're saying there's warnings, but there are numerous reports on the ground that there are no warnings, that people are getting hit, that families have been killed from these attacks.
Welcome, Shark 300 Raiders. We are currently covering Israel-Palestine, and I am furious. So welcome. Hit the follow button and come back again and stick around.
I'll tell you in a practical manner what we should do and what we can do. Create, like in the...
Oh, yeah, this is the guy who really has practical ideas. The guy who said, yeah, just Palestinians should just wander into the desert, Fivehead. Yeah, this guy has really practical ideas. Rely on the good graces of the Israeli military to provide for you. You know, we promise not to provide just explosives on top of you.
The past in history, a humanitarian corridor. When there is a humanitarian corridor, and we have been discussing this with the United States, then we can guarantee in this corridor that nobody will get hurt. Now, again,
Egypt shot down all of those ideas today, point blank. There is no humanitarian corridor, and there does not appear to be one likely in the near future.
There is a way to receive them all on the other side for temporary time.
A corridor between Gaza and Egypt. It's the only non-Israel Israel-controlled border crossing.
On Sinai, because what did Hamas turn out
on the other
Gaza?
side? Are we
Gaza,
talking about Rafah? Are you saying the other side that go to Egypt?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And Egypt will have to play ball because this is human life is at stake.
Oh my God. Egypt will have to play ball because human life is at stake. You are the one, my brother, you are the one killing them. You are the one who is putting their lives at stake. I can't, bro. I can't. Egypt will have to play ball because human life is at stake. Yeah, like surely a country wouldn't say, I don't know, initially decide to deport a large group of people that they considered undesirable, find out that deportation was actually not that economical or for any other reason unfeasible, and instead decide to mass murder a given population. Surely that's never happened before. I can't. History is a circle, my friends. They are passing on the most horrid lessons of World War II.
But sir, human life is at stake because you're cutting off power. You're shutting down hospitals.
What an actual Chad. Mark Lamont Hill, like, actually calling out both the lead spokesperson for Hamas and a former intelligence official, one after the other. No, yeah, Al Jazeera does really great work. You need to take some of its Middle Eastern coverage with a grain of salt, but I think in this case, it provides really good coverage on Palestinian issues.
You're bombing residential buildings. I mean, right now, there is a hospital that does not have sufficient power. There is a hospital where people are literally going to die. And Israel's energy minister, Israel Katz, said no electrical switch will be turned on, no hydrant will be open, no fuel truck will enter until the Israeli abductees are returned home. Now, the ICRC spokesperson, Hisham Mahana, said that by cutting that power, hospitals are going to turn into graveyards. This is not an ideologue. This is the International Committee of the Red Cross. They're saying that because of your country's actions, not the actions of Hamas, not the actions of Egypt, but because of Israel's actions, the hospitals are going to turn into graveyards. How is that not a war crime? How is that defensible by any standard?
First of all, the war crime, if anything, is Hamas. They are the ones, and I know exactly.
Ah, yes. You see, I can't, dude. They're just like, oh yeah, well, they war crimed us first, so we're gonna war crime them back 20 times harder. That's clearly that's clearly fine. What are you talking about, guy? Like, oh yeah, some terrorists killed babies and children and women and civilians. Well, we're gonna kill 10 times as many. I'm sorry. How does that solve the problem? Like, how does that solve the problem? How? Explain. Well, they did a war crime, so we're gonna do an even bigger war crime. A, that doesn't solve the problem. B, you're just doing bigger war crimes, so you are clearly more evil by every objective metric. I just...
Exactly what you're talking about. Hamas does not allow sometimes...
No, Gamergy, exactly. To them, it's team sports. It's team sports. You took X number of ours, so we're going to take X number of yours. You know, it's team sports. They do not care about anything except for the numbers on the spreadsheet. And they want the numbers on the Palestinian end of the spreadsheet to be 0. They want 0 Palestinians.
When they can, they keep those civilians captive. They don't allow them to run away because this is what they want. Now, I know they...
Additionally, and again, this needs to be brought up more, Israel funded Hamas for years. Netanyahu has spoken publicly about how if you reject the Palestinian cause, you should be in favor of funding Hamas. This is controlled opposition doing what it was designed to do.
area. And I suppose you're talking about the main hospital, which is the Shifa hospital.
Yep.
The Shifa hospital has been turned into a Hamas bunker. If Hamas wants to say...
You see, the criminal is taking hostages. Therefore, we will blow up the criminal and his 5 hostages, and that will be justice. What are you talking about, bro? There are babies in the NICU of that hospital. And you're like, oh, well, you know, we gotta bomb it anyway. We gotta make sure the power goes off. You know, we wouldn't want power going to that bunker. We wouldn't want to not kill babies on the off chance we kill a terrorist by bombing it. Like I'm sorry, if a police if a criminal took like 5 hostages and then the police arrived and just shot all 5 of the hostages and the criminal, that would not be justice. We would be calling for that person to spend life in prison, death penalty. You know, like that is what we would be calling for in that circumstance. But he's like, "Oh, well, but that's a totally reasonable way to react in this situation." It's insane. Insane.
Save them. They should just leave their arms, come out, and nothing will happen. But as long as...
Yeah. Because we all know people who are unarmed and come out into the open in Gaza, famously nothing happens to them. We literally watched a video of Palestinians minding their own business and a settler walking up, punching one in the face and then shooting him in the stomach while the IDF watched. And then the IDF protected him while he walked back nonchalantly, like he hadn't done a single goddamn thing. That man he shot was unarmed. And then that settler stayed there and shot at the ambulance to try and prevent it from picking up the man he had just shot. And he was able to do that because he was being protected by the IDF in that circumstance. Yeah, you can just be unarmed and mind your own business and not get shot. What are you talking about? You can... The reality is, you can be unarmed, minding your own business in Gaza right now, and white phosphorus can rain down from the sky and burn your lungs, burn you from the fucking inside out. That's the reality right now in Gaza.
As they keep the Shifa hospital, just like schools and kindergartens, as bunkers, and they fight out from there, there is no law. There is no law in this universe that protects them, and this is what we're doing, and this is why the world
are there any independent reports? Are there any intelligence reports that show that the Shifa hospital is primarily a Hamas bunker and not an actual medical site?
Yes, and you know what?
Where?
And you know what?
Where?
And mark my words, and you can show it again because I know it's recorded. When this war is over, and we will bring in the international press to Shifa and to all the bunkers, the underground tunnels that Hamas has created in Gaza. Ask intelligence services of every country in the world, they know it. But anyway, what I'm saying is...
No, just to be clear for the audience's benefit, no intelligence services has claimed that. Not one government has claimed that the Shifa hospital is a Hamas bunker. That is your claim, and I want to be very clear that that is your claim. And you're saying you don't have any reports, but that I should just trust you.
No.
Mark your words. Trust you. And later on, it'll be proven true.
I'm telling you, everybody will see.
Okay.
After the war is over.
Fair enough. I have to.
Everyone will see the nuclear weapons in Iraq once the war is over.
Move on, just in the interest of time. But I want to continue on this same vein because the Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres.
Well, as we all know, if somebody's built a tunnel and has guns, we need to bomb them into oblivion and any hospital that they might be near. This is insane, dude. By the way, this is fascism on display. He's defending the mass murder of Palestinians. The solutions that he is offering aren't real. And he is at every turn justifying the massacring of Palestinians. Is Hamas terrorist? Yes.
Said that he was deeply distressed by Israel's announcement of a siege on the Gaza Strip. He said that the humanitarian situation, quote, will only deteriorate exponentially, and that crucial life-saving supplies, including fuel, food, and water, must be allowed into Gaza. So the UN is saying you must do this.
Well, you know, water can be used to keep terrorists alive. Therefore, we should deny it to 2.2 million people. That makes sense.
Saying you're not going to do this. How do you?
No, we're not saying that.
Again, we need to deny 2.2 million people, half of whom are children.
He's saying doing it immediately. What I'm saying is what you're doing.
No.
He's saying doing it immediately.
I got you. I'll tell you exactly what we're saying. I'm saying we will do everything for the Gazan people. Once and now, we demand immediate surrender, unconditional surrender.
Well, one, I'm not a Hassan orbiter, and two, I think most people are being pretty clear that Hamas is a terrorist organization. So, like, coming in and asking that to, like, try and provoke a response can probably rub a lot of channels the wrong way, especially right now when we are literally on the verge of witnessing a genocide. So that would be why.
Of Hamas. If Hamas people come out with their hands up and clear their weapons, believe me, everything will be restored to Gaza. It is Hamas in Hamas hands.
Now I understand. Thank you for clarifying that, sir. I think we're actually on the same page here. You're saying that once Hamas leaves, you'll grant the Gazan people food, shelter, fuel, electricity, hospitals, schooling.
How generous.
And if they don't, and if Hamas doesn't leave, then they'll continue to starve and die in hospitals. You are defining for the international community right now collective punishment. You're saying until Hamas acts differently, the 2 million people in Gaza are going to be treated this way. And once Hamas acts differently, these 2 million people in Gaza will be treated better. That is exactly what collective punishment is. You're holding them accountable for the actions of others. That is
God, this man is just absolutely nailing this interview.
the definition, the textbook definition of collective punishment, sir. Now, you may accept that that's what you want to do, but this is absolutely a contravention of international law.
Well, I'll tell you exactly. No, had we pushed them into the wall, we're not pushing them to the wall. We want to open a humanitarian.
What effect do you think denying 2.2 million people clean drinking water will have, Danny? What effect do you think not having food will have on them, Danny? Well, we didn't physically force them up against the wall. Well, okay, yeah, but you didn't need to. You didn't need to because you had other tools at your disposal to punish 2.2 million people, the majority of whom are children.
Humanitarian corridor so they can leave. But if Hamas...
So that who can leave? So that who can leave? Citizens? You're saying civilians can leave, but only through the Rafah border, correct?
At this point, yes.
So they can't
because
come.
Where else?
Your country! They can come in.
Yeah, Israel controls every other entry point. For fuck's sake, like, Palestinians can't even get in a rowboat and, like, try and row to another country. Because if they do, they'll be torpedoed by Israel's navy. Like, there's nowhere for them to go except through the border crossing at Rafah, which is currently closed to them by Egypt, or to go through the Israeli borders, which are all closed to them by Israel, who is currently trying to tell them all to leave, and they have nowhere to go, because again, Israel controls every exit point except for the border with Egypt. And Egypt is not taking them right now.
But to Israel!
I'm telling you one more thing I want to say.
I want you to address that point. Don't just smile, sir, respectfully. You're saying you're making a corridor. They can go to Egypt. You're bombing them. You say you want to save them, but they can't come in.
First of all, I'm not smiling. I'm crying in my heart. I'm crying in my heart for all.
Crying in my heart just looks, when I'm crying in my heart, it just looks an awful lot like I'm smiling.
All the butchery of thousands of Israelis. Why do you think the world is with us? Why do you think the world is wise? All the international media was there. So don't talk to me about collective punishment. Don't talk to me about.
Interesting that you're not actually arguing on the substance of it. You're saying, well, the rest of the world seems okay with what we're doing. That's not saying you're not doing collective punishment. You're just justifying the collective punishment.
Humanitarian. These are new rules of the game. There is no coexistence with Hamas, which is worse than ISIS, and we will not stop. We are allowing the population to leave. But if Hamas will...
To where? You know that the border crossing with Egypt is closed, and you are actively bombing it. Where can they go? You have closed all of the borders. You have closed even the slim possibility of leaving by sea. Where are they to go?
Will surrender, there won't be any problem whatsoever.
Danny Ayalon, thank you so much for joining me on Upfront.
Pleasure.
All right, that is our show. Upfront, we'll be back next week.
What a Chad. I have to say, that was infuriating on so many different levels. Did he get fired for that? No, he actually got hired specifically to do that. He got fired from, I think, MSNBC for saying things supportive of Palestinians, and Al Jazeera hired him. CNN, sorry, not MSNBC. Absolutely evil. Yeah, a lot of mainstream news outlets in America have been slowly disappearing their Muslim or Middle Eastern journalists. You'll notice that there have been some hosts and they've just been removed, you know, just quietly without any announcement. Infuriating. So, folks, we've been going for about 3 hours now. I didn't do any ad breaks or top of the hour, you know, calls to action or anything. But if you've been enjoying the stream, please hit the follow button on Twitch. We're getting close to 9,300 now over on Twitch. It'd be really cool to hit 10K by the end of the year. And if you're watching over on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and hit the like button on the stream, because it's really nice to get hit some baseline likes. It boosts it in the algorithm. So I always love when that happens, because I can see conservatives finding my channel and being absolutely befuddled by encountering left-wing content. If you've gotten anything valuable, I'm not going to say if you enjoyed my content, because we've been covering just objectively terrible stuff. But if you've gotten anything valuable out of my coverage, please consider dropping some subs or donos, because this content is brought to you by viewers like you. I don't really make ad revenue that is at all meaningful. Like my channels are not big enough for that. So I rely on you guys, the viewers, to support me with subs and donos. And if you would like to do that, come over to riverboat.gg. That's the on-screen chat here. And if you drop subs or donos over there on that site, I get 100% of your support, as opposed to when you drop subs and donos on Twitch, I get 50%, or if you drop subs and donos over on YouTube, I get 70%. So consider doing that, is all I'll say. You are a treasure. I always get value from your content. I'm glad. I'm really glad you do. Hey, Anbiata. Hey, Hustler. How you doing? Also, hello, the Prof and Zakina. Zakina? I like seeing all of the tipster folks in chat. I really appreciate it. We were gonna have tipster on today. I am just very terrified. Things are going to move very, very quickly. They have been moving very, very quickly. Regarding the Israel-Palestine situation. And there's a decent chance that, well, things could really pop off today in particular. There could be a ground invasion of Gaza, and it will be very, very horrible. Oh, also, within Israel itself, police are assaulting and arresting journalists. Yesterday, the BBC reported that one of their reporters had been assaulted, beaten by Israeli police. That's just a thing that's happening now. So, yeah. France is doing bad things too? Yeah. Well, France is also one of the most Islamophobic countries in Europe. So I'm not surprised. So, anyway, real quick, Kairyu, thank you for gifting subs to Natalie Lush, Penny, Gayfesh, A Symbolic Symbol, Celestial Heart, and Solar Lander. And Gay Aaron, thank you for the $20 dono. I very, very much appreciate that. And Vegcom, thank you for the $42 dono. That is incredibly generous. Thank you so, so much.
I know this is rough for you, Jack. It's rough for us too. Get some bourbon or share a dinner with that lovely girlfriend of yours.
Thank you.
DWA.
Thank you for the $50 dono, Paladin. That is incredibly generous of you as well. Yeah, it's... I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Like, I'm autistic, so I don't emote as much. Like, it takes energy for me to emote. Generally speaking, like, it takes a lot to get to me, but it's been really rough.
Thank you for the informative coverage of these issues. It is appreciated.
Tipster, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. That is very generous of you, and I'm glad. I'm just glad that you guys find my coverage useful and helpful for understanding this situation, because it is one of the most easily misunderstood global tensions, you know, currently ongoing, and it's been ongoing for so long. And there's so much propaganda out there. But yeah, I mean, like, honestly, today, what what broke me was the story about the Red Crescent organization opting to stay in territory that, again, no one who is currently in Gaza, okay? No one who is currently in Gaza thinks that they are going to be okay. No one thinks they're going to be okay. They accept that there's nowhere to go, and they're just kind of waiting. You know, where can you go? What can you do? Nothing is safe. Nowhere is safe. And some of the people who are most likely to be targeted, healthcare workers and ambulances, are en masse choosing to stay and do their best to save people's lives. And that, I mean, there is that's true selflessness. You know, like, they know that they are at a higher risk of being killed or even being completely caught up in the liquidation of the Palestinian people, and they look at this situation and they say, there's no way in hell I'm leaving. And that is bravery. I mean, there's no, in my opinion, there's no greater bravery than staring death in the face and saying, I'm gonna stay. I'm gonna stand my ground. Multiple writers, journalists have already been killed by the IDF. Yep. It's brave and it's beautiful, and I hope they are not repaid for their bravery with shrapnel. Yeah, from the Red Crescent, we don't leave people to face death alone. And frankly, I'm trying my best to keep it together, because I know that it's not, this isn't as bad as it's gonna be. It's gonna be so much worse. This is, and I know there are people who don't understand that yet, but this is not even, this is the prelude. This isn't even the introduction chapter. This is the blurb at the beginning of all of this. I'm terrified. Absolutely terrified for the people in the people in Palestine. No, Nixon Plummer. It's not the epilogue. When it really begins will be when the main ground invasion begins. Because the main ground invasion is going to get, it's going to be the rounding up of the Palestinians. It's going to be killing indiscriminately and claiming that the people you were killing were Hamas terrorists, regardless of whether or not they're, 12, 13, 14. Women running away with their babies. They're going to claim they're all Hamas. Or they were a hostage, they were being held hostage by Hamas, being used as human shields by Hamas, and therefore it's justifiable to gun them down like dogs. And my heart aches. It aches. And yeah, I think what's keeping me from crying about a lot of this is just the knowledge that the tragedy is just beginning. And the calls for wiping out every living person in Gaza are intensifying. I'm going to play it one more time because it's just... I have found nothing else that exemplifies what I'm trying to convey to you than this video. And I know it's horrible and it's terrible, and I've played it twice already. We're going to watch it one more time. Yesterday I talked about Ezra Yachin, a 95-year-old reservist who fought for the terrorist group Lahi, a group that tried to ally itself with the Nazis twice, a group that tried to ally itself with Mussolini on a different occasion, and went on to try and ally itself with Joseph Stalin. An explicitly fascist organization. And he's still alive. And here's what there were a bunch of feel-good stories about him being called up to boost the morale of the IDF. Does he represent Israelis? No, but he does represent the IDF. He's explicitly working with the IDF, and these videos are being put together by the IDF, and this is what they are putting together. Be triumphant and finish them off. And don't leave anyone behind. Erase the memory of them. Erase them, their families, mothers, and children. These animals can no longer live. Nowadays, we have no excuse. Tomorrow, Hezbollah could send airstrikes on us, and the Arabs here could attack us. So we have no excuse. Every Jew with a weapon should go out and kill them. If you have an Arab neighbor, don't wait. Go to his home and shoot him. Attack them and don't wait for them to fire airstrikes at us, and for the Iron Dome to activate. Attack them before that. We want to invade, not like before. We want to enter and destroy what is in front of us, and destroy houses, then destroy the one after it. With all our forces, complete destruction. And enter and destroy. As you can see, we will witness things we never dreamed of. Let them drop bombs on them and erase them. All the prophecies sent by the prophets are about to occur. This is, frankly, what my tears, I think, wait for. The fulfillment of this propaganda that they are communicating and normalizing to their soldiers. Jesus ain't die for this shit. Come on now. Well, he's not talking about Jesus. He's Jewish. Like he's a fundamentalist Jewish man. Like he's talking about the Messiah coming, the coming of the Messiah for the first time.